Hey, what's up, Liron here. Today I'm going to teach you a really cool and useful trick for painting highlights in an effective way and how to avoid this very common illusion you might fall into that prevents you from painting highlights accurately. I was actually asked by a student of mine to show how to paint these plums, and we got to this little insight. Let me share with you first how I analyze the photo. You'll better understand it this way. So this is actually really cool. We have this photo. Now look at these plums. It's very easy to look at these highlights and think to yourself, this is a highlight, right? It's lighter. But look at what happens when I swatch the color. And I'm going to show you, look at how it actually is much darker than the white here. We're going to talk about the white in a second though, because this isn't even white. Let's watch another section of that highlight. Look at how dark this is. This is the highlight in this example, and it's very confusing because think about it, often highlights are more warm because it's where there's the most light, and the shadows are more on the blue side. With plums and a lot of other instances, it's the highlights that are cool and the rest of the fruit is a little warmer. So that's another little trick here. Now look at this, that's another thing to understand. Now look at this is white. Almost nothing here is white, and this is something I also talked to you about before. So these highlights, so-called, aren't really highlights. They have quite a strong value. So let me show you the structure of the plum. Now, if you remember, we talked about reflected light in a recent video. Look at how much of a variety of values and colors there are in one plum. First off, we have the shadow underneath. Then we have reflected light that you can see right here from the desk. Then we have the core shadow right here. This is a core shadow. It's as strong as it can be. Then we go back to some more maybe natural colors of the plum. You'll get a bit of red here and the highlight that is a little bluer, okay? So now that we've seen with our very own eyes that the highlight isn't really white, it has a color and it's a cool color, we're gonna have a much easier time painting this. Let me show you. So let's get started with the first demo here. I'm actually painting the plum on the left side, okay? That's the one I'm focused on. And the drawing is going to be very simple. It'll take like 20 seconds. We got the plum in, we got the shadow in, and now we're going to start establishing the different nuances of colors and hues just by drawing these very simple, gentle shapes. Now here's the important part. Remember, we swatched the highlights and they're quite blue and they're not paper white. So look at what I'm mixing here. I'm mixing this little neutral blue with a bit of phthalo blue and a bit of quinacridone rose or carbazole violet, and I'm painting those highlights in first. My plan is to paint this wet on dry fully. So I'm gonna wrap around these highlights with the rest of the colors that we swatched earlier. And swatching them out just once on Photoshop, like I've shown you, will really help you to better know what to paint. If you know the color you're looking at, you're certain that's the color, it's going to be much, much easier to paint it. See, most of the issue is not technical. It's not how to mix the color accurately. It's about knowing what color you're mixing to begin with. So we have this nice spot here with a bit of a stronger red. Underneath it, it's a little bit of a darker purple, right? And up above, it's going to go a little darker. Now, as I wrap around these highlights, notice again, they're darker than the paper white. That's the key here. And as we get to the bottom part, I want to show that reflected light. Again, this reflected light is what gives it life. It gives it richness. It tells the story of this isn't an isolated plum with perfect lighting. It's actually a part of an environment. It's a part of a scene. And it's much more satisfying to look at, in my opinion, that way. And I'm also getting that thin strip of shadow under that reflected light. So after you see it painted, if you look at the original one, and I'm adding in a bit of darker color wet and wet here for the core shadow, after you see it painted, it becomes so obvious the nuances of color that are there. And I'm by no means 100% accurate at all. The black I just put could be a dark red, but the thing is, you notice there are different areas within the fruit. It's not just a flat purple, right? Now I'm gonna lift a bit because I want to shape the highlight. Look at how I'm going to swoosh it down and it gives it the shape I'm seeing in the reference photo, which is really cool. I'm going to do pretty much the same for the other one. This is something, you know, feel free to manipulate the shapes you're seeing to make them a little more edgewise and just the overall shape, make it look more like the thing you're painting. And then we're going to add a bit of shadow. They're quite neutral on the plate. I'm not going to get into too many details here. I just want to show you how I render the plum itself. And this will be example 1 out of 3. I'm going to show you real quick 3 processes And you're gonna see exactly how this comes into play. This is a very interesting one too, because look at how boldly I'm gonna place in those highlights in a couple of seconds. Here I'm actually gonna do a bit of a different process. You'll see a bit more a la prima and a bit more almost, it's gonna look not oily or gouache, but like you'll see very visible brush marks, which I absolutely love. So I'm gonna place in the highlights just like we did earlier. The highlights are not white. That's the thing you wanna get in your head, and you can paint them wet on dry. You can actually paint the highlight, not paint around the highlight. Paint the highlight and then wrap it with darker paint, and you'll get this perfect edge. If you get the timing right, you'll get the exact smooth transition. Can you do this in multiple glazes? Yes. Can you paint blue over the entire thing? Some people will ask that. Why not just paint the whole thing blue and then do another layer of the darker colors? My answer to that is, this, to me, is a lot more effective because you get the perfect edge immediately. And the cool thing about it is it's less work for us. It can be very difficult to paint over an existing layer of paint and smoothen out the edges. And you know, the more layers you have on paper, the less freedom you have with how much you can blur it. And I would say not just the more layers, but the thicker the paint is. If you do very thin glazes, you get more of that freedom. And that is fine. Again, you choose your own process. Here I'm coming back with a bit of a damp brush. It's not as strong as it looks. It's damp, and I'm gonna lift back that reflected light. But generally speaking, you know, you follow whatever process works for you. What I'm showing you is how you can get in one go a bit of, in my opinion, more of an effective way of doing it. I'm going to place in that core shadow like before, and look at all of these brush marks. As soon as I'm going to add the shadows in the middle, you're going to see a multitude of individual brush strokes. To me, there's a lot of magic to them. I absolutely love the way it looks. If you're more into the smooth, clean look, that is perfectly fine. To me, this is perfect. Look at this swoosh of multiple different colors. There's neutral black, there's more of a purple, there's more of a red. It's this nuance and richness of capturing all of the reflected light on the skin of the fruit that gives it the life it has. And I'm going to show you in a couple of seconds. The third example is going to be very different from these two because we're going to paint multiple plums, you'll see. Now I'm just trying to establish a bit of the reflections and shadows on the plate itself. Very loosely. Again, for these, I'm just giving the fruit a backdrop. I'm not actually going to paint each and every detail I'm seeing. I'm not going to paint the whole plate. It was never my intention, okay? So yeah, now I'm going to smoothen out some edges and all of that. Now for the last example, which we're going to jump into in a second, this, by the way, gives more context to the highlight. That's the thing. When you put this darkness, it gives it more of a meaning, right? Because right now it was wrapped with paper white. Now it has more meaning. And this blue, strengthening a bit of the highlight in this case, is just perfect. Look at all the shapes. I absolutely love this. Now look at how lazy I am. I just picked up a piece of paper with a swoosh, a mark already on it. I'm gonna awkwardly zoom in on it to show you. But this is vastly different because here what I'm gonna do is paint multiple plums. And look at the photo. It has a strong flash on it. So I'm going to show you a process that is similar, but a little different. Now I'm kind of brave and I have experience, so I'm painting all of the highlights in one go and then wrapping around them. Now, some people may think this is very difficult to do. I'm going to tell you it's not. The thing is, you do, if the mixing and everything is intuitive for you and you have a good grasp of it and you understand what you're looking at, it shouldn't be as difficult, okay? It's not really difficult, it can be a little challenging if you're just doing this for the first time. But to me, it's very easy to drop a couple of shapes knowing in just a second I'm gonna wrap them up with different colors. Now, also, you can go with a wetter shape first to make sure that it lasts longer and you can take your time and mix the dark color to put around it, right? I did cut out most of the mixing, but not all of it, so you do see. Actually, I left a lot of the mixing in still. So you see it is almost in real time. You see me mix, I'm not doing any magic. Anyone can do this. Again, if you have a shape on paper and it's still wet, you can continue adding next to it. Things will blend really gracefully, okay? So I painted the highlights. I'm wrapping them with nuanced, darker colors with black and purple, violet, red. You can introduce a bit of yellow too if you want to add some interest to it. And I think I'm gonna do that in a couple of seconds. But the whole, here I'm gonna add, not yet, but I'm gonna add a bit of yellow. Maybe I already have and I missed it. But you see the way you wrap it around, it gives the highlight a meaning. But even here, the highlights are darker than white. They're not white, they're not paper white. And if you miss it, you're losing some of the feeling of the fruit. If you're gonna do a white highlight, something will feel off. It will feel too shiny, it won't feel like a plum. That's how you express material, by getting the value and the color right. That's actually it, really. It's not about textures usually. Now, something really cool to notice here is the flash is on. So what happens when the flash is on? We get dark shadows. We get a stronger contrast. So let's feed it with this darker shadow. And I'm painting really fast here. This is quite, again, alla prima. You could devote way more time into it. You can work in multiple washes. What I'm trying to show you here is the understanding of how highlights work this way. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you see the highlight is not what you thought it was, it's actually a nuanced color. It's much easier, much more easy to capture in a convincing way, right? And I'm gonna lift back a bit because I want to make the one on the left a little stronger. Coming back with a damp brush, damp, not wet though, and then coming back and lifting. You can do this for another one. If you come back with a wet brush, it's gonna spread out the paint a little too much. With a really wet brush, you want a damp brush. And this is it, this is the full process. Anyone can do this, put a bunch of shapes on paper, have fun. Learn a bit about the subject. If you're gonna paint something that interests you, you're gonna very naturally wanna learn more about it. So I'm not really that concerned about that. I know that you will end up learning it. Now, if you're painting stuff that just you don't care about, that's your issue. Maybe try finding the thing that does interest you, that you have some kind of personal connection to. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a pet, maybe it's a relative. It doesn't matter really. That's the true unlock for accessing all your faculties and painting this way, right? So I hope you found this one useful. The example mostly on the rightmost, I like the most. I like the one in the middle. I like the ones on the left. The one on the right, though, it speaks to me. Something about it is really, really nice. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn how to paint like this, check out the link in the description box for the frustration-free watercolor course. We actually have a very similar exercise there of a pair that I keep showing you. Develop that freedom. Finally, learn to let go. You'll have just the right amount of control. Trust me. You'll have the control when you need it. You'll have the freedom when you need it. It's another tool. It's not even a tool. It's another... Saying it's a tool really feels like downgrading it. It's something way beyond that. And once you're able to summon that freedom, everything changes. This was definitely the pivotal moment of my painting journey. I think I hit it finally in 2022, actually, like for real. But yeah, thank you so much. I want to thank lastly everyone who supports me over on Patreon. This is huge. This allows me to do this with complete freedom. If you want to receive credits at the end of the videos, check that out as well. There are some exclusive posts there, and there are going to be some more soon. And yeah, this is it. We'll talk to you again real soon. Take care.